Good morning. I do have my work cut out for me. Very odd. I was pretty impressed. I'm gonna do what I always do on these trucks. And that just happens to be my thing, by the way. This paint job's probably 5-6 years old. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. And here he is leaving. It wasn't quite as fun as I was expecting. And that starts right about now. Well, hello there, gang. My name's Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. and today I'm out in front of Flash Industrial Painting taking a look at this 1992 Freightliner FLD 120. Now, the laundry list of things that we're going to have to do to this Montana truck, this truck came from quite a few hours away, is fairly extensive. For one thing, the paint job that's on it has to come off of it. As you can see, the probably stock from the factory color was this metallic sky blue. And some other painter got a hold of it. So I'm not sure if I even need to finish that thought, right? I mean, if you've watched very many of my videos, by the time a lot of trucks get to my shop, some other painter's already gotten a hold of them, and now I got a mess to deal with. Well, hey, Kevin, you gonna come help with this one? You're gonna have your hands full, buddy. And so what we've got here is extensive runs from basically every single rivet. I know, buddy, it's ridiculous. 3 runs from that rivet. Runs. I mean, they're everywhere. 9 out of 10 rivets at least have runs from them. I wish that this truck was going to be just that easy, but it's not. Since it was painted by some other painter, and one thing I like about Packard trucks, you know, predominantly the Peterbilts and the Kenworths, is they have the stainless jams. So we just mask off the jams and we're done. But Freightliners and a lot of these other brands have jams you have to make decisions on. Well, this painter elected not to. And this is what it looks like when you just fog paint into the jams. Here we have that stock blue. Look at this. He just fogged it in. So you know this hasn't been prepped. You can see it's just easily chipping out, and what's underneath it is shiny. You know, I can probably chip it out with my fingernails if I had the patience to. So this is all chipped up. So now the jams are going to need to be stripped. I know, bud. It's ridiculous. And that tells me what are the chances they did their prep correctly, right? Well, then you look here. You can see it's just coming off. You can see see how well they prepped it? Paint's just coming off everywhere. Now we can totally blame whichever clown painted this truck for those kind of inadequacies. But what we can't blame that clown for are the inadequacies of Freightliner. Not as a company that builds trucks. These FLD 120s are a good truck, and they'll get you down the road at a reasonable price for many millions of miles. I know many people that have done it. But what I don't like about a long production run of Freightliner trucks is the fact that they didn't prep their steel right. Whatever etching primer that they used didn't work correctly. So I see Freightliner after Freightliner around here with the paint coming off all the way to the bare metal. And that's what this is. Look at that. And I haven't been up there yet, but the owner tells me that 80+% of this roof has the paint already off of it. This is a 92. So it's been around quite a few years, but if this was a 92 Kenworth, we'd have a whole different host of problems, and this wouldn't be among them. Same with Mack trucks or any of these Ford trucks. They each have their own issues, but this isn't among them. Mostly. Kenworths had their years where the paint would peel off the doors, but for the most part, this wasn't among. But Freightliners, year after decades of it, where I see Freightliner trucks with the paint coming off to the bare metal, and the owners aren't crazy about having to pay me about the same price as they paid for the truck to get it repainted. But what are you going to do? I'm not going to just paint over this like this previous clown did. We've got to take it to bare metal. We don't have a choice. It's either that or take it to a shop that's willing to do a lesser job. That's the choice. And this guy came all the way down from Miles City, Montana because of the reputation my shop has. And he knows that we're going to take this truck to bare metal and we're going to start over on it. Another thing we have to deal with is this fairly extensive fiberglass damage. It hit something at some point. and messed up this side. This side's got a little bit of damage. A crack there, some more damage. So we also have some hood issues we need to work through as well on this truck. And so the first thing I'm going to do here today is I'm going to pull this truck up to the shop. We're clear down in the lower driveway right now. Get out my old pressure washer. It's not an old pressure washer. It's only a year old, a little less than a year old. And it's a hot rod. And I'm going to go ahead and put the heat and the pressure to this thing and see how much of this paint we can get to come off, because that's just that much less paint that I have to put paint stripper on. All right, well, as you can tell, we got most of the paint off of it. I didn't do anything with the wings because the wings are coming off. I didn't do anything with the visor because the visor is getting replaced. Kind of puzzling. They didn't use that black primer there and did there. Makes me wonder if some panels were replaced at one time, or I don't really know. I don't know what happened. Sometimes it's tough to piece together what exactly has gone on in the history of a truck, particularly one that's as old as this one is. And the hood held on to its paint pretty good. I really tested it, as you can see. And that's a good starting point to test it, because you can't prep down inside that crack, so that's a good place to get the paint to come loose. And it seems like it's on there, but I've got some other, I'll tape test it and do some other stuff, because this truck's gonna have a stripe job. So I really need to test this paint on this hood before I go trusting it. In all likelihood, I'll end up sanding through at least this white paint everywhere where the stripes are gonna be, just so I can trust where my stripes go. But for now, I've got quite a few steps in front of me to get this pressure washer put up, get all these water lines bled out. You have to get everything bled back. It's the middle of winter, so I gotta get everything bled back out before dark, and it's gonna be dark soon, so I better get to it. Okay, here it is the next day. I went ahead and got the sandblasting done, and I used sand because I thought that I could probably get away with it, and I did on the chassis. It came off just fine. And used sand's a lot more friendly for like these front wheels. That way they're not all chewed to heck, you know, and then you have to run sandpaper over every square centimeter of them to try and smooth them up if you can. That particular sand is pretty darn rough on aluminum, so I wanted to use used sand, and it worked out pretty good. So I got the wheels sandblasted, got the chassis all sandblasted, as you can tell. Then I'm gonna have them masking on it while I go ahead and pull these wings, and while I go ahead and pull that old exhaust mount, because as you can tell, we don't need that old exhaust mount. They've got the dual exhaust on this truck. And so I'll get that stuff pulled off here. We'll go ahead and get it masked up and start formulating a game plan. All right, we're getting some of the stuff pulled off here. We're getting the steps pulled off of the tanks. The tanks are going to get painted. Got one of the wings pulled off. Working on the other one right now. I've got most of the stuff taken off here, and among the remaining things I still need to take off, I need to use this cutting wheel and cut these rivets on all these brackets. Over there, they're bolts, but the back sides of the bolts are spinning, so they all need to be cut. I don't want to tear the interior out of this sleeper, although I may end up doing that part of that anyway, because of this little feature right here. You're not going to be able to see it in the video, but there's a nasty little dent right here, and it's right through the brace, right through everything. So I may end up taking out part of this interior anyway, just to get this dent out. But the back sides of these are spinning, so they need to be cut. All of these are spinning, so they need to be cut. None of these are nutserts, and the rest are all rivets. So I need to cut all of those off to get that plate off, get that brace off, that brace off, those three braces off, and that plate off, and of course this off of here. Another set of holes I'm going to plug is I'm going to get from the back side, and I'm going to fiberglass these holes shut. These ones are being used, these ones are not, and they don't need to be there. All right, I got the exhaust pulled off of this side, and I was really happy to see that somebody took the time to put in nutserts and kind of do the job right when they mounted this dual exhaust on this truck, until I came up top here and I see that This one's stretched and pulled out almost already, and the reason is because they just had the threads of the bolts stuffed right down the inside of that brace. That's all it was. The threads of the bolts pushed up against the inside of that brace was the only thing holding those bolts in. As though that's gonna last for 10 days, let alone 10 years, let alone 20 years, rattling down these old ranch roads up in Montana. So whoever did this just left it like that. Just put it in there half-assed and left it for the next guy to deal with. So that next guy, I guess, is me. And what I've got is I've got these special nutserts that are angular. That way the chances of them ever turning in the hole are next to nothing. They use these a lot on the inner panels, like on Peterbilt hoods and stuff like that. And I've got a size bigger than this if I need, but I'm gonna try and fit that in there and squeeze that in there. That way, and put the flat side, one of these flat sides, right towards that brace, so it's not encroaching on the brace. And we'll try and squeeze those in there and see if that works. Now, I only have these in a metric size. This is an M10, but and these are standard. So it's going to be a little bit hokey that these are going to be taking, 3/8 bolts, and these are going to be taking an M10. But these are the only style of nutsert I have that have that angular effect to them, to help, like I said, keep these from turning back out of the hole, and also to be able to put the flat side of it next to that brace so it'll actually fit next to that brace. So it worked. They're in there good and solid, but it's going to take them 2 metric bolts on this side. Still a lot less hokey than what they had there. Inside the fender here on the driver's side, here's one of their repairs. Just pulled it out of there by hand. Here's another messy repair. I was expecting that. They repaired it with cloth instead of matting, and they didn't prep it right and did a lousy job. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of this all pried out of here. This is just some sort of soft caulking. I mean, it doesn't amount to anything. As you can see, it's all split away. So I'll get all that crap dug out of there, all this crap dug out of here, get a proper fiberglass repair put together on this side, and then even repair this and stick it back to the fender where it's supposed to be. All right, now at this point, I've prepped the back side of this hole. I actually have a grommet that I'm going to use on this hole when we go back together with them. Prep the back side of this hole, and there's one just like this on the other side too that I prepped. Prep the inside of the 3 spots where the mirrors were mounted on here. And then I did the same to the other side. While I was at it, I went ahead and got this prepped for an inlay style repair. So in other words, it's prepped to where the center is paper thin. There's almost nothing holding it together. That way I can put a repair on the outside here and solidify it that way. And this one I could have repaired from the inside. I could have just put some prep right here, but it runs across here. And I didn't like how I wasn't gonna have full contact with it. So I went ahead and just did this one from the outside using a 3-inch roll-lock disc on a die grinder with, this is 24 grit, but I've also used 36 grit on some of this stuff. And I did use 36 on some of it over here. Like for instance, I put this on a just a little handheld, portable drill, and it's a 2-inch roll-lock with 36 grit on it. That way I can get into some of these tighter spaces, like back in here, stuff like that. And you see I've prepped the back of where these 3 go. Look how extensive that one is. I'm gonna have to put a big patch in there, nice deep patch, so I can dig all that out from the outside and really get a start over. And on the inside here, I prepped this flange on the inside of the headlight, and then all this back to here, all this inside here. I dug all of that old garbage repair out of there, even prepped the inside of this lip and up here. That way I can go ahead and put a good sized patch inside here. But before I do any of that inside, I need to do these outside repairs. This is a 2-part repair because, as you can see, in prepping this just came apart. There wasn't really anything holding it together. By the time I got that crappy patch off the backside and then did an inlay style repair on the outside, I just chewed it right in two. There's nothing holding it together. So I need to take a piece of tape and run it right here where the paint still is. And then I'm going to suck that piece of tape up underneath and tape it to the bottom side of this headlight bracket in a way that brings that up right where it needs to be. And you can see here, speaking of paper thin, there is nothing left of that. This is just paper thin. dug it almost all the way out. I'm gonna do a good size inlay style repair there. You can't get to the backside of this at all. You can't get to the backside of this at all. So I'm going to do a big inlay repair here and across the front, since I can't get to the back of it. The headlight's there, but it's not doing, you know, it's not gonna provide a solid enough backer for this. And this was all cracked along here, so I didn't trust it. So I'm gonna do an inlay repair here, across the front here, and then especially right here. And then of course around the corners, you can see again, paper thin. I got this down to nothing. In the center, it gradually gets thicker as you get to the sides. That surface area right there is where you're gonna get the meat of your repair. And what I'm gonna do that repair with is this temporary workstation with these two sawhorses, just this old junk board sitting on top of it. Got some cardboard here, and I've got a lot more where this came from. I've got my fiberglass matting in different sizes that I'm gonna need. I've got my stir cups, my stir sticks, my gloves. Okay, now I've got this repair done. I've given it a couple hours. It's good and cured out. It's not tacky at all. It's room temperature, back to normal. Now you'll notice I didn't repair this one. I just repaired these ones, and this guy over here as well. But the reason I didn't repair this one is because I noticed that there's a big bump in it. Now, this is paper thin. Look at that. But yet there's this big ripple in it. And if I go any further with my sanding, I'm just gonna have this huge gap torn into it. And the reason that there's this ripple, I realized, is because of this spring. There's a set of springs in here. I've never even seen this on a Freightliner before. For all I know, it's common. It's not like we do a whole bunch of Freightliners. I've done a handful of these FLD 120s throughout the years, but it's not like I've done hundreds of them. And I've never seen these springs in here before, and they're kind of ingenious. I see a similar setup on Western Stars all the time, where it provides a little bit of aid when you're going to open the hood and a little bit of aid when you go to close the hood. And that's good, but this spring right here is creating a bunch of tension. It's pulling on this way, big time right now, and that's what's causing that little ripple. Whenever I open the hood and the hood's resting open, that ripple's no longer there. So in other words, I'm gonna open the hood, I'm gonna do all my repairs to the inside, and when I'm done doing that, or during the time period that I'm doing that, I'm gonna come out here and I'm gonna go ahead and do these repairs as well with the hood open, because that ripple won't be there and I'll be able to get it good and flat like it's supposed to be. Okay, so here it is first thing the next morning, and I went ahead and opened the hood like I said I was gonna do, and then did my big repair there. And the reason I have tape right there is to make sure that that's held to the corner and to keep this in from sliding, because this was a heavy repair down here. And the heavier you have your fiberglass, the more the chance that it's going to want to just slide on, especially on a vertical repair. Which is why I have just this single piece of tape across each one of these, because as you can see, these are so bulbous, both of them. They're sticking out so far that I had to put thick patches, well over a 1/4 inch thick. And that's a lot of weight, and it's pretty slimy at the time, and that's just going to want to try and run if you don't do something about it. So that's why I put just a single piece of tape across each one. That's enough to hold it in place until it gets set up. And I've got this duct tape holding this in place, holding it close to this headlight bucket. That way everything's held nice and steady while it's setting up. And now it is set up because it's the next day. It's rock hard. It's ready to go. So I'm going to take a Sawzall, it's a small air-powered Sawzall, and I'm going to cut around all these perimeters, get everything cleaned up, cut around here and there, get rid of all the tape, and then go ahead and re-prep it, grind it back down to some degree, because some of it, like this, is just a hair, it sticks out a little bit too much now. I put so much in there that it's a little bit higher a level than this is. So now I got to grind this back a little bit and make it more level. Same with here and on the other side. And then you can see right here, I put my patches on the back side of those holes. It's sticking out kind of right here. I'll get in there with a die grinder with a burr on it and clean that out. But you can see that these are now fixed. And now I'm gonna trim everything up and clean everything up and get ready for the next step. All right, now at this point, I've got everything smoothed up the way I wanted it. I went ahead and removed all the paint off of the side of the hood here. And that's no easy task. That white paint job might be a rinky-dink paint job, but whoever painted it thick. I mean, that paint is some thick paint. I'll show you what I mean. right up here where this exhaust mount was mounted. I don't know how well you can see how thick that is, but for being a layer of paint, that's pretty darn thick. I mean, it's a 32nd of an inch or something, and that's pretty thick. It's no joke. Look how easy it comes up. This was under an exhaust mount, and yet, I mean, look at that. And it's surprisingly thick and brittle, which means that it's really going to be hard to sand off, and it is hard to sand off. I ended up using 60 grit, which is fine for this, because all I'm going to do is wet sand prime it and then sand the whole thing down again. So 60 grit's not going to hurt anything. I'll probably go over it with 180 grit before I prime it anyway, but it took quite a bit of elbow grease to get that off there. But I just don't trust that they did their prep. Everything else they did was just quarter-assed, you know? So why would they have prepped it right? And I know that it was prepped to some degree, because all these spots where I feather it back, it feathers back in a way that lets me know that it's been sanded. Plus, I tested it heavily with my pressure washer. It's on there surprisingly well. I can't trust that every square inch of it was prepped. After all, down in here, in that joint right there, was a mess. I had to take a aluminum paint stick and 80 grit and get in there and gouge all that out of there just to guarantee that my paint will stick. And the other side's the same. So I mean, there's some areas where I know that they didn't take the time to prep it. And you look at stuff like this. This is stuck. I couldn't get this off with a pressure washer, but look, there's only 2 rivets here that are visible within the paint. And look at them. Look at those runs. 3 runs from that one. Big old run from that one. The only 2 rivets left on the whole truck that still have white paint around them, and they got runs from it. So, and that's the only spot, one of the only spots that actually stuck to the truck. So I'm not exactly sure what they did, but I've got a fair guess at what they didn't do. And so that's what I'm trying to make up for here. When I go to unmask this stripe job here in a few days, I do not want it peeling up anywhere, and I want to be guaranteed that it's not going to. And what this blue is the factory paint. I got back down to the factory paint. I'm satisfied with that. And at this point, I've got the passenger side stripped back as far as I want to. Like I said, I just want to guarantee that my stripe job, when I go to unmask it, isn't going to peel up any of this risky white paint job. And the way that it's feathered back, it wasn't really as risky as I thought it might be, but I still took the time to do it anyway. Now back here on the truck, we're starting to do some sanding. We're gonna eventually get rid of all this black. I've just gone through and gotten rid of all the white paint patches here, just like I'm going to there, just like I did on the lower side right there. I'm gonna get rid of all these white paint patches with 80 grit or even 60 grit, depending on what it takes. Then we'll come through and we'll sand everything else down over it with 180 grit like we've done here. And now today, one of the things I'm gonna tackle is this very difficult dent. Look at how far that's dented in. Right here, that's in probably a ½ inch. I don't know how well that shows up on camera, but this whole seam is just bashed in. And that's pretty unfortunate. That's a terrible spot for a dent. You can't just put filler over that. You gotta, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do yet. I'm going to get in the interior and see how difficult it's going to be to access that spot to see if I can beat it back out. At this point, I don't know exactly how I'm going to handle it, but that is a terrible spot to have a dent. And that's what I'm going to be working on while the crew is doing some more sanding on this here. All right, getting some of this sanding done. He went ahead and got the white off of there for me while I was busy back here. I went inside the sleeper and looked, and man, there's a big set of shelves across the back I would have to take out. There's a coat rack deal that goes across the sleeper this way that I have to take out before I can take the shelves out. We're talking a day to get this entire back, and the whole back is one piece like normal. So it would have been a whole day taking that interior out to get to that spot. So what I did was I drilled out one of these rivets, and here's what a typical nutsert looks like. That's the size of a typical 1/4 inch. That's the size of bolt that goes in it, nutsert. And I have these special nutserts, and as you can see by that pleated spot right there, that when you twist the threads on the end and suck it up, it really folds. You can tell by just how big those pleats are that it really folds and mushrooms out big time on the back. And that's these are really good for holding things together that really want to come back off. If you got a nutsert situation and it's holding a lot of weight or something that vibrates or something like that, you want to use these. These are pretty darn special. And I hammered one of these through and then got it to compact on the other side. And that's what this is right here. And this is just the hole that that bar went into. I'm gonna put another nutsert in there for so when we go to put the bar back on. And then I took my slide hammer and I put a 1/4 inch bolt out the end of it. And then I screwed that bolt into it. And then I pulled this out with my slide hammer. And as you can see, it's pretty darn straight. We're getting this side banged out. Won't be long, this guy will be completely prepped and ready for the next step, which is a bunch of body work. And also I've got to paint basically the whole truck, not the hood, but I got to paint everything else before we do much else, because there's so many dents and dings that you won't see until you do. All right, at this point we've got the entire truck sanded, got the hood all sanded and finished, got the cab and the sleeper sanded and finished. The top of the sleeper is all bare metal. We're all completely down to bare metal. You can see there's a dent right there. And you can see where some of the dents are. Some of the dents and dings. But I'll guarantee you can't see them all. And so today the goal is going to be to finish up what little prep we have left, just scratching around a few things and that sort of thing. Then I'm going to get the entire cab and sleeper in paint today. I'm going to prime it today in epoxy, and then I'm going to paint it in gloss, just in some color that I have spare paint of. That way tomorrow I can come in and start really identifying where all the dents and dings are and start getting some of them fixed. I got the primer on. It's had plenty of time to cure out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close these doors, and then I'm going to spray the entire thing into some gray paint. I just had a half a gallon of gray paint left over from another job, and that's what I'm going to use on this. And I'm going to be sparing with the paint around these door jambs. Then I'm going to go ahead, once that's done, I'm going to clean out my gun and reload up the actual color these jambs are going to be. And then I'm going to open the doors, and with very light pressure, I'm going to spray the jambs on the driver's side door, passenger door, and this sleeper door, all in the correct color that the truck is going to be. And then I'm gonna leave all these doors open all night long so they can cure out. That way tomorrow, the first thing we can do is come in and mask up all these jambs and get this show on the road. Okay, well, here it is first thing the next morning. The crew's gonna step through the door here literally any second. When they do, I'm gonna have them mask up the jambs here, starting here with the passenger side, and then also the driver's side, and then the driver's side sleeper door as well. And then once they're done with that, I'm gonna turn them loose. They've got to leave for the weekend anyway, and they don't need to be here for all the carnage that's about to ensue, because now that I've got this in gloss, I can see dents everywhere. This truck is a mess. So now I need to just embark on getting up 800,000 dents fixed over the next few days. And then once that's done, I'll go ahead and get the wet sanding primer on it. Once that's done, I'll get the wet sanding primer sanded. Once that's done, I'll get the first color on it. Once that's done, I'll get the first color all masked up within the stripe scheme. And then once that's done, I'll have the crew come back and mask up those stripes for me. Okay, now the crew's got their masking done. I went ahead and turned them loose. They're going to leave town here for the next 3 or 4 days anyway, which works out really well because I have a bunch of body work to do, as it turns out, and I knew I would, but you never really know until you get gloss on something like this exactly how much body work there is going to be, and as it turns out, there's going to be a bunch. I mean, you look across the back here in the light, it's probably not showing up too well, but it's just a sea of dents. And that's not surprising. This is a 92, and according to the tag inside of the sleeper door here, it belonged for the longest time to an oil field rental company. So it was a rental company that rented this truck out to oil field company after oil field company. And that explains why this whole side of the sleeper's been reskinned. at some point. I've seen all the evidence I need to see of that this whole side of the sleeper's been reskinned, which means that the truck got in some sort of an accident. And all of the dents and all of the dings and all of the multiple damage and then all the absolute piss poor repairs. This outfit probably had some guy in their shop so they wouldn't have to send it out to a body shop. They probably had some guy in their shop that just did their painting. And that's why just one terrible solution right after another has been employed on this truck. And that explains how this truck's been treated so roughly. Again, it's a 92, so it's got a lot of years of being out there, doing the deal. But even that even been said, this truck is in rough shape. I wish that I could show you just exactly how many dents are in this, but if I had to count, I'd say there's hundreds. So this is an absolute mess. Almost every square inch of this is going to be covered in body work. And that begins right here this morning. And that's what the application of the initial bodywork looks like on the back of a truck like this. Now all I have to do is the rest of the bodywork around the truck, miscellaneous dents here and there, and then that damage on the hood. And then I'm going to come through and glaze everything. So go over it all again with glazing. Then I'll be ready for wet sanding primer. Right now I'm making my way down the side, getting some of this bodywork done. As you can see, there's a lot of these areas that are prepped. And it's hard to tell the ones that are prepped from the ones that have bodywork because the bodywork is light blue and the paint itself is gray. So like for instance, these dents have had their initial body work done. None of these have. This one has. None of these have because there's not much to them. They're very slight dents, so they're only going to get glazing. They don't need heavy body work and then glazing. They can just use glazing. And so that's why just those have been done. There was a nasty little dent up there at the top of the door. I had to remove 2 of the dents because it's right by them and took care of that one. This body work up here, this was all kind of bashed in. Up around the corner even had a bunch of heavy hail. So I got the initial body work done on that. And then I got the initial body work done here on the 3 spots on each side where the mirrors were mounted. And I got the initial body work done here where the fiberglass repair was. Same with over on this side. Did the body work there, did the body work where that fiberglass repair was. And then it caught my eye. There's a crack there and a crack there. Whatever busted this hood up initially is most likely what caused those cracks. But while I got everything torn down and have the grill out of it, I'm going to go ahead at this point and rough this up with 24 grit on both sides and put a fiberglass patch just on the outside. It doesn't need to be inlay. It doesn't need to be on the inside. It can just be right here because the grill is going to go over it and you won't see them and nothing's going to interfere with them. And then it'll be good and solid for the rest of its life. Okay, well, here it is first thing the next morning. Yesterday I got all my body work done, got all my glazing done on top of that, and then at the end of the day I got all my wet sanding primer on. Now the goal here today is going to be to go ahead and get everything sanded that pertains to putting the black on today, and I'm going to prime the chassis and prime and paint the black on the truck today. All right, got everything sanded that pertains to the black that I need to apply today. Now I'm going to go ahead and I've got it all blown off. I'm going to go ahead and mix up some primer and get some primer on this guy. And now at this point I've got the primer on it and it's had plenty of time to cure. I'm going to go ahead and get the black on it now. Okay, that went pretty well. Here it is first thing the next morning. Now, what I'm gonna do here this morning is I'm gonna go ahead and push this hood down the rest of the way, and then I'm gonna tie it down, which means I'm gonna take a bungee and I'm gonna stick the end of the hook through that hole, and I'm gonna tie it down to that step. And then I'm gonna do the same on the other side, because just to set the hood down under its own weight isn't good enough. You put a stripe job on it, and then put together day comes and you put those rubber tie downs on it and really get it cinched down, and it'll sink down another 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, and now your stripes don't line up. So I'm gonna go ahead and cinch it down, put some pressure on it, and then I'm gonna start laying out this stripe scheme here this morning. Okay, I've got the first part of the striping done here. As you can see, I've gone no further than the hood itself, because I needed to figure out the hood here first. And as I just mentioned, I actually figured out where it's all gonna go back on the cab and sleeper first, because it's got to be square, and I don't want it running right through a big line of rivets or anything like that. So that had to be square. Then I had to make it work on the hood. Well, then I had to go a step further on this particular hood, because this is an FLD 120, and here's the there's the picture that the owner actually sent me of the truck that he wants it to look like, right? And that's a Kenworth. That's not a Freightliner, but he wants that stripe job. Well, unless you want one of these lines running right through this line right here, and this line right here is almost a 1/4 inch wide and a full 1/4 inch deep, and if you intersect one of these lines with it, it's going to look wonky. There's no way it won't. Like I said, this is a 1/4 inch wide and a 1/4 inch deep, so to stripe across that in such a gradual fashion, whether it's the top line or this bottom line, would look wonky. It would never look right from a distance or up close. So the goal was to avoid lines of rivets like these, but also avoid any contact with this line, except for right here where I have no choice but to go across it. But that's pretty much straight across it. You know, in here, I'm trying not to gradually go across it. So I'm trying to get all my measurements correct, get the space in between correct, get the top one not as wide as the bottom one, and then the middle stripe or the middle space in between even more narrow, just like on the picture I just showed you, but all at the same time while avoiding this line in the hood. So it took a few hours to get everything finagled exactly where I need it, and in a way where it won't have harmful repercussions back here on the cab and sleeper, but I've got it the way I want it. Now I'm going to transfer all these measurements to the other side of the hood and to the other side of the hood. The reason I'm going to do both sides of the hood before I do the rest of the truck is because I've got the crew coming in here in about a half an hour or so, and I need to have these done so we can go ahead and open the hood, get it out of the way, and they can be working on it while I'm just straight striping back here. All right, and at this point I've got the passenger side done, just the hood and the first part of the cab here. I wanted it I wanted to make darn sure that it was all going to be good and straight with each other, and that I have all my marks so I can continue. I'm actually going to continue on the other side. I prefer striping left to right. That just works best for me. I'm quicker that way. So I'm going to go on the other side and start right here. Tie these ends in the way they need to be, start right there and go down the door and around the back of the cab, except for, like I said, I'm starting on the other side. The crew's going to come through the door here in about 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to, we're going to unstrap the hood here, open up the hood for them so they have easy access to everything, and then they can go ahead and mask up from here to here, and from here to here on both of these stripes. All right, now at this point, I'm about halfway down the side of the truck, or halfway around the truck with about half of the stripes, and shop foreman Kevin came and joined us. Make sure we're doing a good job. Quality control is of the utmost importance to shop foreman Kevin. All right, we're most of the way there, or we're more than half of the way there, as you can see. Just got to finish going up this side. Got the hood all masked up on this side entirely. I just have to finish my masking here, and the crew's following me, masking up the centers. We just have this last little stretch to go. All right, I've got the rest of the vinyl run down the side of the truck. Crew's finishing up filling in the rest of the center here. It won't be long, it'll look just like that. And then we'll be ready to go ahead and begin sanding on all the other details and get the rest of this show on the road. Now, we've got this all masked up. We've just begun the final prep. And one of the other things that I'm going to be doing with this particular project is I've got all 3 emblems. One that goes on the hood, which is much larger, as you can see. And then the other 2, which go just beneath the passenger and driver's side door. And you can see they're all in rough shape. paint-wise. They're not cracked, they're not beat up. All their fasteners are still on the back. They're in good shape that way, but paint-wise, they look like crap. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tool that I bought a long time ago and never opened. Look how long ago. That's how long this has been sitting around the shop. That's how much dust it's collected. But it's a sandblasting gun, a little handheld, and you plug it into, once you assemble it, which I don't even know how it goes together because like I said, I haven't even opened it yet, but I'm going to put used sand in this little container here, and then I'm going to use this sandblaster just outside the door of the shop today to blast the fronts of all three of these. Then I'm going to paint all three of them black, and then once that's all dry and cured, I'm going to run a sander over the top and hopefully reveal the Freightliner emblem the way that they looked when they were original. Well, the time has come, gang. Got everything sanded, everything finished, striping's done, all the prep's done, scratching's done. We've got everything prepped on the chassis, everything's blown off and ready to go. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some black primer. I'm gonna prime the chassis in black, and then I'm gonna get some gray primer, and I'm gonna prime the truck in gray, and then I'm gonna leave it for the night. It's pretty late in the day. And at that point, I'm just gonna leave it for the night, and then tomorrow morning, I'm gonna come in and get everything shot. Well, all right, here it is, first thing the next morning. I've gone ahead and thrown a bed sheet over these two fuel tanks once they were primed and the primer got good and set up. That way the overspray from this won't sit and build on them. Then once that happens, then you'll have to resand them or do something else with them before you paint them. This way I can just remove the sheet and paint the tanks when the time comes. And normally when I'll do a truck like this, if you've seen any of those videos of those blue and white trucks with the black chassis that I do, I'll do the chassis at the same time as the truck, and I really had initially planned on doing that with this truck as well, just to shoot the truck in its color, or shoot the chassis first, then the truck, and then reshoot the chassis lightly. But this distance right here, with all of these components right here, by itself probably wouldn't be a deal breaker. I'd probably attempt it, but the distance right here between the top of this and this, that's too close. If I go to try and shoot this, I'm going to get black overspray on this, and then I'm going to have black on my other color. So instead, what I've decided to do is I'm going to go ahead and look the truck over this morning and fix any little thing that needs fixed, and go over the masking again, make sure that's all tight, and then I'm going to shoot the truck in its color. Then I'm going to leave the shop for a couple hours, and that's all it'll take. This paint actually will set up and be dry to the touch within about an hour. So I'll give it about 2 hours, and then I'll come back in. I'll run a piece of masking paper and I'll tape it underneath here. I'll put the tape part underneath here. Then I'll lightly pull it up over. I won't string it tight against the truck. I'll just pull it up over, and then I'll tack it on this paper. And I'll do that on this side right here, and on the other side in that spot. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll tack paper under here with the tape under here, and then I'll lightly bring it up and around, and I'll tack it to this. So this will be covered in paper, but not really pressed against my fairly fresh paint. Then I'll come through and I will lightly shoot the chassis at that point with its second coat with really light pressure, and then I don't have to worry about those kind of details. Well, all right, got everything ready to go. It's 100% blown off, looked over, tacked off. It's ready as it's ever gonna be. And I went ahead and got my paint mixed up. Now it's time to get some green on this guy. Okay, well, it's been a couple hours, and I've come back in and I've gone ahead and put some paper down here, and I've just tacked it to the spots where there's masking, where the jams are masked up, where this is masked up, again, where the jams are masked up. Because even though it is dry to the touch, I mean completely dry to the touch, it still has only been a couple hours. So if I were to plant my finger in there and push hard for a second and then bring it back, you could see a smear, and not a smear like where it moved the paint, but a smear like where you could see where my finger was there, and he would even leave my fingerprint, and that would need to be thoroughly buffed out. So it isn't like it's impervious to anything, but it is dry to the touch. So I've gone ahead and masked up this side, did the same thing to the other side, did the same thing back here. Again, I just put the tape where the masking already was, so I'm not trying to tape on my fresh paint. And now I'm going to go ahead and mix up my black paint and get the rest of this black all shot here this afternoon. Well, all right, here it is first thing the next morning. I've already walked around the truck and looked it over pretty closely, looking for things like excessive dirt, dry spray, runs, hairs that got caught in it, those sorts of things that do happen. And if they happen, you want to kind of take care of them before you start unmasking. So, but I've looked it over, it turned out nice. I'm going to go ahead now and start getting some of this masking off of here. And that right there is the biggest advantage to taking all the extra steps I took on this. There's no way I could have unmasked that without peeling up that old paint. That old paint was peeling up on its own. There's no way, I don't think, that I could have unmasked the hood without stripping all of that paint off of the side. I mean, it turned out to be pretty darn connected and pretty darn decent, but nerve-wracking at best, and I think my chances are low that I wouldn't have had at least one or two little spots peel up if I hadn't taken it all the way back to its original coating on the side, which was painstaking to do it the way I did it. But I'm glad now that I did it, and that's why I go through all these extra steps. So on put together day, I don't have a nightmare unfold in front of me when paint underneath my paint starts peeling up. Do you realize what a process that is, and what a huge letdown that is on put together day to basically have to kind of start over? So really glad I did it this way. Now, while I'm waiting for the crew to show up, and by the way, I've got some pretty bad news. The crew isn't going to show up. Just my daughter Ashley's going to show up, because it was her and Kittrick working on this. That's her husband, working on this truck before. That's who you've seen in the video on this particular truck. And day before yesterday, unfortunately, I rounded the other corner of the truck. And I'll kind of play by play how it went. I came around this corner of the truck, just getting ready with some tools to do some stuff. Kittrick was standing on that 6-foot ladder right there. And that ladder was right there next to the truck. I mean, right next to the sleeper. And he was clear on the top of it. And he was busy sanding and doing some prep, and he went to shift positions, and all of a sudden the ladder just kicked out from under him. And I saw the whole thing. I was 5 feet away when it happened. I was facing it like we are right now. And that ladder right there kicked out, and he went horizontal in the air, and instantly, all in the space of a second, that ladder kicked out and he hit the ground hard, and he broke his wrist. We didn't know at the time he broke his wrist, but we had guessed it, because when he got up, he said it hurt really bad and it hurt to move it. And that's what happens, I guess. You know, when you try and catch yourself, when you're falling and you try and catch yourself, that's a chance that you take. And when you have no notice whatsoever, you're just, all of a sudden you're airborne, the first thing you want to do is catch yourself. And so that's what he did. And we hauled him to the hospital, and found out that he had a broken wrist, a pretty darn broken wrist, in fact, to where the very next day, which was yesterday, he had to go to a different town, because we went initially to get the x-rays and stuff in Newcastle, and that facility there is useless. And they didn't give him the correct information. They didn't offer him a splint. They didn't offer him any kind of pain medication, nothing. So when we took him to Rapid City, that's when they found out just how bad it was, and they got him in for kind of emergency surgery last night. And they ended up fusing some bones together. It's pretty serious. So he'll be in recovery for quite some time. And this morning, Ashley's coming in to help me put this truck together. So that's a very unfortunate situation. We've had very few ladder falls throughout the years. Considering I've been doing this for a quarter century, I've only fallen off a ladder a couple times. We've had very few incidents in the shop and no broken bones up until now. But at any rate, Ashley's coming in this morning. Before she does, I'm going to go ahead and get all the parts from next door. They're in kind of cold storage, and get them over here so they can start warming back up, and getting some of these other little details figured out before she gets here. I'm going to have her doing the unmasking while I'm installing parts here today. Now here I am toward the back of the shop. You can see I shot these steps that go on the tanks, which also got shot. I shot these emblems. They're good and black now. And then the fenders, I took the 2 top holes out of both of them because they're not in use on this truck. And I went ahead and shot them and separate and left them back here. Now, one of the things I'm gonna do here this morning is I'm gonna actually take a sander and I'm gonna sand all of these flat surfaces off and get back down to the original aluminum or pot metal or whatever that is, and make them look like new emblems again. There, just like that. Sanded the tops down with 180. They're not going to rust. They're made out of aluminum or some sort of alloy like aluminum or some sort of pot metal. Now they look brand new again. And there's the jams all finished up. That emblem looks pretty good there on the side of it. And back here, I left this rivet out and that rivet out so they wouldn't get in the way. And then I installed nutserts on both sides so I can go ahead and install this grab handle, which was never on here before back in this spot. But this one will work nicely in that spot because then that'll allow you to step on the battery box and get up on the back of the truck to access all your hoses and your spotlights and whatever else you need to way more easily. And just like that, it's all installed. That's going to work really good. It's at a good height. Well, all right, gang. Got all the masking taken off, all the parts and pieces put back on. I think this guy's done. Let's go ahead and walk around it and have us a look. All right, here we have a 1992 Freightliner FLD 120. Here's how the chassis on the passenger side turned out on the front. Here's how the chassis on the driver's side on the front turned out. This is a Montana ranch truck, and when it showed up here, it was in rough shape. This used to be an oil field rental unit. This used to belong to an oil field rental outfit. So you can just imagine what it's been through. This entire side of the sleeper at one point in time was reskinned, including most of the back. So it apparently got in some sort of accident. The emblems were in rough shape, and I went ahead and rejuvenated them. The tanks weren't painted, and now they are. Got the wheels painted black. The paint was coming off of this thing in sheets when it showed up here. Went ahead and pressure washed most of it off and then mechanically abraded the rest of it off. Pulled these sleeper fairings off right here. Had a bunch of dents in the back. Once I got paint on it, it was covered in dents. Now there's no dents left in it. Looks brand new again. Put some grip tape on top of this battery box here. Sandblasted the chassis. Sandblasted the wheels. Painted the wheels black. They're nice and shiny. Got the chassis, all the details there. Triple coated back here. Put a custom stripe job on it. Put a grab bar in a location where it wasn't before so they can use the grip tape that I put on the battery box and be able to get up here and do whatever they need to do easier. Had a bunch of dents up the side. Had nutserts missing from the exhaust. I went ahead and put new ones in. Painted the fuel tank on this side as well, of course. Turned out sharp. All the details are there. The hood was busted up badly when it showed up here. Over here on this side, I had to do a bunch of inlay style repair. This was broken completely in two. By the time I got it all prepped, this was just flopping loose. Got it all repaired on the inside and a bunch of repairs done on the outside. It's good and rock solid now. Redid this emblem as well. We pulled the grill out of it so you can see the green back behind it in all the spots. Put a brand new custom visor on it that's never been on this truck before. Fitted it while we were still in the putting everything together process, while we were still tearing the truck down and masking everything up. That's when I fitted it so I wouldn't be hassled with trying to fit it today and then find out possibly that it might not fit today. That's how that visor turned out. Painted the roof. There's a bunch of dents up there. Got good gloss on it. Spent all day unmasking it and putting it back together. It's dark outside now. But this truck's done, ready to go back to Montana, and we're on to our next incident. Well, that does it for this guy. Up next, we have a 2005, I believe, Kenworth W900 that we're doing. And we'll get that in here as soon as we get this guy pulled out. Hey, if you like this video, you should take the time to hit the like button. That's going to help me grow this channel. And if you want to see more of what goes on around here, you should check us out at Facebook at Flash Industrial Painting. And if you want to see more videos like this, or domestic auto body, or gardening, or art, or any of the many things we do around here, you might as well just take the time to hit the subscribe button while you're at it, because, you know, we always got something going on. We'll see you guys around.